Right now at noon, some early voters in Neosho County, Kansas, run into a ballot error.
It's another warm and windy day across the area with those partly to mostly cloudy skies. We have thunderstorms incoming for our Wednesday. Details in the forecast coming up.
Plus, with a week left until Election Day, the presidential candidates get ready for their closing statements.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Well, a man has been charged after shots were fired in Joplin's downtown bar district. This is KOAM News at noon. I'm Elise Snowy. Over the weekend, 23-year-old Cade James Gilpin was charged with unlawful use of a weapon following an early Saturday morning incident on the 500 block of South Joplin. No investigation determined Gilpin was involved in an altercation. Now, according to the JPD, while Gilpin was in the city parking lot, he fired a weapon and a 22-year-old male was struck in the eye as a bullet fragment or piece of debris struck the victim's eye. Now, the victim was rushed priority 1 to an area hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Gilpin posted a $10,000 bond and was released early Saturday evening from the Joplin City Jail. Now let's check in with Chris Warner for a look at the forecast.
Yeah, today is much like yesterday. We've got partly to mostly cloudy skies out there. It is warm and windy, but not as warm as where we were yesterday. It's MoDOT camera 20th and Rangeline. Our camera in downtown Pittsburgh. You can see a little more sunshine here and there, so that's why it's partly to mostly cloudy. And those wind gusts, another thing to talk about. This camera's been rocking back and forth out there. Wind advisories again through this zone and in Oklahoma until 8 o'clock this evening. Everyone else over here, they run until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, and that's because those winds are going to continue to gust 40, maybe even 50 miles an hour through today and into tomorrow. Yesterday started at 62, nowhere near where you should be, and take a look at that high. We beat our record by about 5 degrees, originally set back in 1950. We're not looking to break any records today, but it will still be well above normal. 79 already in Joplin, 78 in Pittsburgh. Most of us into the upper 70s. Some low 80s. We're looking at low 80s on average, but of course a little further south it'll be a little warmer out there. Through the rest of the evening, again, that mix of partly to mostly cloudy skies, but as we start to go later overnight, those skies will become mostly cloudy. And like last night as well, winds don't really ease up that much, still gusting 30, 40 miles an hour out there before they turn around and pick right back up tomorrow. Now they're going to really pick up ahead of a cold front. That cold front is going to bring us very fall-like weather. It's going to bring us some much needed rain, but it also has a threat of severe weather associated with it. Those details coming up here in just a few more minutes. Elise?
All right, thanks, Chris. Well, a mistake on some southeast Kansas ballots means some early voters might not be finished voting. Voters in Neosho County, Kansas are voting for judges this election season after early ballots left them off. Now, according to the Neosho County Clerk's Office, drafted ballots did include judges, but when they went to print, the back side was not included. Now, the mistake wasn't noticed until the second day of early voting. The county clerk's office created an amendment ballot until corrected ballots could arrive. And for those voters who cast their ballots before the mistake was realized, they will still have the opportunity to vote for the judicial positions.
The addenda ballots only contain those judges' races, none of the other races that had already been given out previously to early-in voters or the advanced day voters. And the addendum ballots were then provided in addition to anyone who continued to come in into early voting.
Now, the Neosho County Clerk's Office has now received corrected ballots that will be used from now on for both early voting and the general election day on November 5th. Now, early voting begins this week in Oklahoma. In-person absentee voting kicks off tomorrow at 8 a.m. and runs through this Friday, November 1st for the November 5th general election. No excuse is needed to vote early, but voters must provide proof of identity when checking in at their early voting site. You can head over to KOAMnewsnow.com/elections for a full list of polling places and voting sites in your area. Well, as Election Day nears, officials in Jasper County, Missouri want to remind voters the state has electioneering laws. Now, these laws include a no electioneering zone within 25 feet of a polling site, and this means a ban on clothing, buttons, or signs that promote a political candidate or stance within that area. Now, voters found in violations, such as wearing a shirt that breaks electioneering laws, will be asked by poll workers to change or to turn their shirt inside out.
What we will do is we will ask them if they're wearing a hat or button. Sir, the law says that you cannot electioneer. Most everybody does this. Oh, I'm sorry, I totally forgot. So most people are kind like that. Every once in a while you get somebody who's a little bit belligerent saying, it's my First Amendment right and I don't have to do what you say. Well, the law says no electioneering, so they cannot wear that at the polls.
The objective behind these regulations is to ensure a hassle-free voting environment. With Election Day 1 week away, Vice President Kamala Harris is set to give what she calls her closing argument speech tonight, while former President Donald Trump held a news conference this morning ahead of another trip to the biggest of the battleground states, Pennsylvania. Now, Jared Hill reports from Beaver County, Pennsylvania.
Former President Donald Trump spoke to reporters at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida Tuesday morning, as the latest CBS News poll shows the race is a dead heat.
The election itself is going very well. We're leading, I believe, in all 7 swing states.
Trump heads to Allentown, Pennsylvania, home of a sizable Puerto Rican community. His visit comes as his campaign continues to face criticism for a joke a comedian made at Sunday's Madison Square Garden rally, calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. It's the final day of voting in Pennsylvania, here in Beaver County, which is a Republican stronghold, where Democrats are hoping to peel away votes. Officials are expecting a big turnout. What made you vote for Donald Trump?
His policies, his strength, his experience. He's a businessman, which I like.
This Democrat in Pennsylvania tells us it's about Trump's character.
He's a criminal. I don't think that he has any business being in politics. If we're going to be a leader, be an example for the children.
In Michigan Monday, Vice President Kamala Harris urged supporters to vote early.
This is going to be a tight race until the very end. So we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Tonight, the former prosecutor delivers what she's calling her closing argument on the ellipse. It's the same spot where former President Donald Trump made his January 6th speech. Jared Hill, CBS News, Beaver County, Pennsylvania.
Well, coming up, an update on the Miami Senior Center after the city took control of the facility and its finances. And later, we're making satisfying shepherd's pie in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen. Well, the city of Miami, which recently took over the reins of the Miami Senior Center, is making efforts to improve the facility. The city received a $75,000 grant to improve the building and layout of the center, including adding more kitchen space. The Miami City Attorney says there's been an uptick in interest and signups at the Senior Center. Well, Outreach Therapy in Joplin hosted a trick-or-treat event for kiddos yesterday. The new outpatient pediatric therapy clinic opens for business this Friday. The clinic focuses on occupational, speech, and physical therapy needs for youth ages 3 to 17.
They can get it in First Steps, which is a wonderful program from 0 to 3 in the home, but once they turn 3, they can't get it. They can get it at the schools, but there's no outpatient facility that has a lot of room for them. So this is all pediatrics. There's swings, balls, rock walls, all kinds of things. We will serve kids with all types of disabilities.
McCullough worked in therapy for 30 years before opening her own clinic. The Joplin School District is now accepting enrollment applications for 3 neighborhood-based preschool classrooms for 4-year-olds. The program is called Little Eagles Flight School. Now, students in Irving, Royal Heights, and Soaring Heights attendance zones will pilot the program. The goal is to help kids gain the skills necessary for kindergarten.
We had lots of kids come in and they weren't ready. They weren't socially ready. They weren't ready to take turns talking and getting along with their friends. So that is my goal for these guys. They can take turns talking, they can get along, they can problem solve.
Transportation services and meal options will also be provided. They'll still to come on KOAM News at noon, Mr. Food.
If you spend more time cleaning up after dinner than you do enjoying it, then we need to talk. Because I'm pretty sure I have an idea that'll change all that.
Now we're warm and windy today, warm and windy tomorrow, but we are tracking severe thunderstorm chances tomorrow evening. The latest on that when we come back. Welcome back to the KOAM News at Noon. So if you are going outside today, you may be wondering, did I sleep or have I time warped, or is this, well, I don't know, oh my goodness, Groundhog Day? It's not. Today is just very similar to yesterday, just not quite the same record-breaking heat that we saw. Let's start with this. It's a look outside from our camera downtown Pittsburgh. We have those partly to mostly cloudy skies, so you can see sunshine getting through. You can also see that camera really shaking in the wind. And a reminder, again, 5 different weather service offices cover our viewing area, so sometimes when it comes to local advisories, they don't always agree on timing. So this portion of southeast Kansas, they run until 7 o'clock Wednesday morning. Everyone else, and Bourbon, Crawford, and Cherokee counties will run until 8 this evening. Regardless, it's going to be windy the rest of today, tonight, and tomorrow. So more wind advisories are likely as the gusts will continue to be in that 40, maybe even 50 mile an hour range. Even as we go overnight, we could still see gusts that high in some locations. As we head into our Wednesday, it will again be breezy. And then that cold front's going to come through later in the evening. And once it does so, and we head into Thursday morning, things begin to calm down a bit in terms of the wind and the weather. However, it is going to storm, and we've got to talk about that. So for the rest of today, again, partly to mostly cloudy skies, breezy, warm. We're going to top out for most of us right in the low to mid 80s out there. Overnight, we're going to go mostly cloudy, and that's how we're going to spend most of our Wednesday. Now, there's a couple of things that we're looking at on the future track, and something that's changed since this morning that you also want to know about. We've got the isolated shower chances around the noon hour. Nothing significant expected there. But as we end the evening, ahead of that cold front, we could see isolated storms developing ahead of that front. If that takes place, these storms will be an environment where they could become supercellular and they could become severe independently. So that's one thing, that's one round we're going to have to watch. Again, they'll be isolated, but they are showing up on the future track. Then, by about 6 o'clock, that front starts pushing this line of storms in. This is where our bigger severe threat and our bigger concern comes from, is this line. So already in the 8th center by 7, knocking on the door of Chanute and Fredonia. And as we go through the rest of the evening, by 9, it's sweeping across Kansas, now into Parsons, Coffeyville, Bartlesville, and Fort Scott. By about 10, 11 o'clock, it's through Pittsburgh, Nevada, Lamar, Joplin, Neosho, Anderson, Miami, Veneta, Grove. So here it stands at 11. Ahead of it, still very gusty winds ahead of it. Behind it, they'll begin to calm down. And by about 3 o'clock in the morning, the last of the storms are out of here. And temperatures are going to fall back behind this front. And it's going to feel really cold, but it's going to be seasonably cold. And it's just going to be a bit of a shock to the system. Now, the good news is, again, these storms bringing us some rain. And again, these estimates will update, but roughly 1, 2, maybe even upwards of 3 inches of rainfall from the storms. The problem is that severe threat that we're having to contend with. And for the last 3 days now, the entire area has been in this elevated risk for severe weather. What we're looking at is an isolated tornado threat, so it can't be ruled out. It's not zero, but it's relatively low. The other concern is very large hail. The bigger concern, some of the new updates, is with straight line winds. They're expecting this line to bring in intense winds. So as if the non-thunderstorm winds weren't enough, this line of storms could bring 70, potentially 80 mile an hour winds. So it is something we've got to keep a close eye on. So after 4 o'clock tomorrow, you want to make sure you've got the Skywatch weather app. You want to make sure that you're keeping tabs on what's going on, and keep it on our KOAM Plus on TV, keep it on the air, keep it on the Skywatch weather app, because you're going to need that information. Again, the rest of today, low mid 80s out there, right around 80 for most of us on Wednesday, and then we'll fall back into the 40s. Halloween, it's going to be cold, but again, seasonably so. But just be prepared to bring a jacket along with you if you're trick-or-treating. 63 for the high, falling back into the upper 30s and low 40s out there. We'll only be above normal really on Monday next week. Outside of that, we are seasonably cool out there. But we also have additional shower and thunderstorm chances through the weekend and next week. And one thing we want to also mention real quick this weekend, more of that much needed rain, yes, but there are concerns. We're going to get a little too much too fast. So some flooding concerns this weekend as well. So a lot to keep an eye on over the next few days.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Well, stick around. We're making satisfying shepherd's pie in the Mr. Food Test kitchen. We'll be right back. Today, Howard has an easy twist on a comfort classic. He's sharing his recipe for satisfying shepherd's pie in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen.
Most of the time, when it comes to making dinner, we're looking for ways to make it fast, cheap, and easy, so we don't have to wash pots and pans all night. If that sounds good to you, then I know you're going to love our one-pot dish that we're making today. And since it's so fill-you-up tasty, your gang will love it too. We start by sautéing a good amount of ground beef along with a chopped onion until it's browned. This takes just a few minutes. To give it its rich flavor, we add an envelope of onion soup mix, a jar of beef gravy, and a few spices. Now, rather than cutting up all sorts of veggies, we simply stir in a bag of frozen mixed vegetables. After spooning this into a casserole dish, we top it off with some mashed potatoes. And these can be homemade, but for this, it's a lot easier and just as tasty if we use packaged refrigerated ones. All that's left to do is sprinkle it with some paprika and bake it off. We can even make this a day or two in advance if we want. What we end up with is a rich and comforting casserole that has everything you like, all in one pan. If that sounds good to you, just go online and get the recipe for satisfying shepherd's pie so you can have an up-to-date twist on an old English classic. I'm Howard in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen, where today we found a satisfying way for you to say, ooh, it's so good.
We can find this recipe along with a lot more good food from the Mr. Food Test Kitchen online. Just go to our website, that's KOAMnewsnow.com. Now here's a look at the 4-state market prices.
All right, the warm and windy weather will continue today. We've got that cold front tomorrow. Strong to severe thunderstorms appear likely at this point after about 4 o'clock, so something we want to keep an eye on. And we'll cool down significantly. More showers and storms into the weekend and next week. And again, we have that flooding concern this weekend. We're looking, we need the rain, but we're looking like we may get a little too much too quick. So something else to keep an eye on.
Absolutely, lots to look out for. All right, thanks, Chris. And Dalbert here first later on.
Lots coming up at 5. For starters, today is World Stroke Day, raising awareness about the symptoms of stroke and supporting survivors. There are an estimated 17 million strokes worldwide each year, according to the American Stroke Association. We're going to take a look at how some therapies are helping stroke survivors gain back their independence. Plus, a look at the growing efforts to save Joplin's Memorial Hall, and is Gen Z planning to vote on November 5th? We're going to hear from students at Crowder College about their thoughts on this year's election. Hope you'll join us for those stories. A lot more, of course. It's all coming up today. KOAM News at 5.
All right, thanks, Dal. And that's the news for now. Thank you for joining us on KOAM News at noon. We'll see you right back here at 5. Until then, have a great rest of your day.